Welcome to Build Back Better, our virtual conference system walkthrough.
Today, you're joined by myself, Avery Kent, who, with Conveners.org. We are a global member-based peer learning network of what we call purpose-first conveners. And we're joined by Michael Cass.
Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm a founder of Story and Spirit, and I work with impact-driven leaders and organizations to harness the power of story to create change through everything from one-on-one coaching to consulting and workshops around storytelling and impactful communication.
And we are also joined by Heather Mason.
Hi there, I'm CEO and founder of Caspian Agency, and we design strategy and we also do production for events all over the world, large convenings, mainly for big social impact organizations.
So let's dive right into our first platform. Welcome to AirMeet. AirMeet is a brand new platform that is focused on helping people meet in large events and build stronger connections. So this is fundamentally a networking-based app. Unfortunately, it also doesn't provide any pricing. You have to get a quote for that, but it is available for both desktop and iOS. I know Heather's been particularly excited about AirMeet, so do you have a thought to share?
I do. I'm really interested in this one from a participant agency point of view, and specifically networking. You know, the vision of what they have is really interesting as far as like table meetups, serendipity, you know, bringing that back into the online function. Bad part is they're in beta, so I don't know if they'll deliver on these promises, but the promises are pretty cool.
And so as a event producer, you know, having the social lounge and the backstage and being able to integrate your attendee management, having multiple presenters, all of these are very exciting. The big question is going to be whether or not they are able to deliver on them. And this is a picture of what that user interface ends up looking like. So you're at a table and you can either grab a seat if one's empty, or you can spectate and watch this. Michael, any thoughts to share?
I just echo what Heather said. If when they pull this off, the idea of the participant agency and everything they're offering is pretty great. We'll see. I think there's a lot of potential here. And I sort of like the idea, just even looking at this, it does mimic when you're at an event and you approach a table and you want to sit down. And actually what I like about it as kind of an introvert is that awkwardness of approaching a physical table isn't there. So if there's a seat, you can be there. And if you want to listen to some of the fascinating people at the table talk, you can spectate without that sort of weird lurking feeling that happens in person. So there's actually some advantage to this kind of format over being in person.
I know Heather is really excited about this. I'm hoping, have you seen Remo yet?
I have not. No, I'm interested in this because you're telling me that it's going to be better than this, or at least
it is. So stay tuned.
Show us some really cool. Yeah, no, I'm excited about that. And I like this graphic interface. I mean, I know we're going to go on to a couple more, but I do think graphic interfaces and UIs that mimic more of the conference environment are going to be more exciting for people as we continue to iterate in the tech space.
Absolutely. Which I think does actually lead in nicely to Hopin. For those who've seen this before, we right now are seeing Hopin as kind of the only platform that essentially does it all in terms of genuinely recreating the conference venue container for an online event. So you have a main stage, you have networking sessions, you have breakout sessions, you have an expo booth. These are all different parts of your venue. So it has 100% participant agency. Folks choose where they want to go, when they want to go there, and even more importantly, they can create their own sessions. So whether it's as simple as Michael and Heather and I running into each other and saying, hey, the three of us should catch up, and just creating a session for the three of us, or as I know many folks do at most major events, you could pre-schedule a meeting with either a potential partner or funder or someone else that you wanted to meet with, and have that private conversation as well, and have full control over that, which has been really, really powerful.
I also like the 4 presenters main stage because that's giving you more ability as a producer to have multiple. I mean, I'm not a fan of panels. Everyone who knows me knows that. But I think we can be creative there, and you can get more voices. And you can also have them in a backstage, which I work with speakers. I like to have a chance to work with them ahead of time and know they're going to present well. So both of those are really nice ads.
My only thought on this is more like a meta question, which is I'm seeing a lot of people gravitate towards platforms like this because they just want to take their in-person event and immediately translate it as quickly as possible to a virtual setting. And the question that comes up for me is a 72-hour long virtual event the right way to translate what you were providing in person, or are there other format options? And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I would invite folks to at least engage in that conversation before looking for the solution that will replicate the same time span and same format of event they were going to do originally.
To your point, even in the screenshot, 2 days, 11 hours and 33 minutes
Yep.
remaining.
Woof.
They are going for those long events. That was this is the session view, which is once again still people in little boxes, which I know is Heather's favorite thing in the world.
I know. The reason the reason I don't like that is because we used to look at this back in the Brady Bunch era. So that means we've been doing this type of graphic interface since the 70s. Like, it's time to iterate. I don't want to be stuck in a box. And I think right there, we're already starting to default to these standards that none of us decided on. And I'm excited about some of the other ones we're going to look at because it's taking a spin into what the internet could provide instead of just becoming the Brady Bunch on screens, which I think that's what we got to get away from when we make it, again, less of taking conference, putting in boxes online, and we've got to change it up to really engage the senses and experience of people who are used to enjoying an event. And I think we need to help them enjoy online events too.
Absolutely, especially when we're already spending all day, every day online. One other feature I'll just name is that Hopin does have this expo booth. They and Pathable and Maestro are three of the ones that are really sponsor forward in terms of having real estate for sponsor logos, having experiences for sponsors. And so with the expo booth, sponsors can have a pre-recorded video or they can host an interactive, GQ bar or something like that. When thinking about the business model of online convening, having a space for sponsors is key. This brings us to what Heather was alluding to, which is potentially truly the future of convening. Mozilla Hubs is a platform that is really built for virtual reality. So when you sign in, you choose whether or not you have a headset or a desktop screen. And it is a proper 3D virtual environment. You can play with 3D objects. A friend of mine used this platform to host a festival very early, and to Heather's point about you need to have fun and enjoy it again, like, people had a blast. They were singing opera in the stars and playing with poetry jams and playing with 3D art together. And so there's a lot there. There are some cons. It eats up a lot of your memory on your computer. It is graphically very intensive. It's also an extremely difficult user interface. So, for Gen Z, young millennials, and sorry to be generationalist here, but for folks who are more native on these platforms, or really native to more traditional video game playing, this feels very natural. They know how to navigate it. For folks where even getting on Zoom is a technological leap, this is extremely alienating and can be very challenging for that. And so we'll see a photo of what this looks like, and I'll toss it back to Heather.
Well, I'm just excited about this because I agree with you. I think you have to have the right audience to engage in this. But what I think this does for all of us is it starts to point us towards the future, and it gets us away from thinking in boxes. And I think the more we get away from thinking in boxes, the more we're going to think about what we could create moving forward. And it shows me that tech companies are starting to blend more gaming technologies and experiential moments, just like, Ready Player One, the movie, with taking an experience online in our whole self. I don't think they're there yet. I would agree. I think you also have to have a very easy on-ramp. And for a lot of audiences, you need Zoom to be the gateway drug. This is far and away advanced, but at least it points us there. I think it's worth playing around with, because I hope this is more of the future.
Yeah, and Michael, I know in the training you had spoken extensively about how when you're using a new tool like this, how it impacts the rules of etiquette or agreements or facilitation techniques. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that excites me about this is it does, like you mentioned, create a different vocabulary for interaction and for events. So it's not like, hey, we're going to take something we were doing in the in-person world and move it virtual in as linear a way as possible. This opens up the possibility of true co-creation of an event where you're building something with folks in real time. And with that comes a whole host of potential etiquette issues. We sort of know how to be with each other in real space. But here, for example, in Mozilla Hubs, if I build something and somebody comes up and starts adding on to it, is that okay? Maybe, but I think being really specific with folks about what are the guidelines for the kind of behavior that we want to invite, especially as we start to move in these realms where the vocabulary is being made up on the fly by the participants, is really, really important. And actually, as I'm saying that, something that comes to mind is Burning Man and the 10 principles, right? These are guidelines to guide behavior. And the same thing can be created for these types of virtual environments, whether it's in Mozilla Hubs or whatever comes next, where people understand what the expectations for interaction in those spaces.
So now that we explored something super cutting edge and interesting, we're going to go backwards to pretty basic and normal. Maestro Conference is just a workhorse of a conferencing platform. It is genuinely designed for interaction. It is designed to try to create that feeling of being in an event, having the breakout groups, things like that. But it is no bells and whistles to that extent, right? It is pretty basic audio visual using Skype. It is a lot of the standard video conferencing tools, but it is also far, far more affordable than a lot of other platforms that we've seen who are trying to genuinely recreate that conference experience. It doesn't require a download if you don't need it. And I think to Heather's point and to Michael's point, there's some features around production and then around facilitation with this that can be really powerful.
And I think it is worth pointing out their pricing model. I mean, pricing models are also uncomplicated are a nice on-ramp, because some of these more complicated pricing models that have percentages and per user and cost pers are just as hard to explain as the actual tech. I will say, for being a workhorse, it's also kind of nice that it has a workhorse pricing, easy to explain internally or to folks outside. And I think for some of the things we need to do where the content is really going to take center stage, it's fine to do a workhorse. You know, it's fine to just get it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just to add to that also, as we've been talking about, for folks who are less familiar with tech, investing in something with all the bells and whistles might not actually serve your audience. So this could be a really great solution for folks who are new to the virtual environment.
And one of the nice features is, you know, with Zoom breakout rooms, they're lovely and all, but as a facilitator, when I want to go walk the room and listen in what a group is saying, I get to be super creepy and just hop into their conversation, and all of a sudden I'm there, and that disrupts their flow. It kind of takes away the value you get from walking the room as a facilitator. And I really appreciate that Maestro Conference is designed with facilitators in mind, where you can listen on the breakout groups, understand the synthesis or the zeitgeist of what's happening in the conversation, and then adjust your facilitation accordingly without being disruptive. The next one is Pathable. Most of you are going to be familiar with Pathable as just your regular old events management software. They are now actively pivoting to virtual convening. This is also one of the most expensive platforms that we've reviewed. Small events for 500 people are $5,500. Large events are $16,000 for up to 3,000 people. It is versatile in terms of mobile, desktop, web. But at the end of the day, like, that is going to be comparable to investing in a venue for your conference. It is also actively in development right now. They are pivoting hard and they're pivoting fast, and so there are some really cool features, like being able to add in pre-recorded videos from your presenters or having public discussion forums. But a lot of the user interfaces are still designed from the original Pathable platform. So like discussions and forums and things can be a little tricky to navigate, especially if you have a lot of people using it. So Heather, I think you've used Pathable or seen it around for a few events.
Yeah, we've used Pathable, but in its previous iteration, not in its current one. And I know they're starting to Iterate, I know they're strong on social media integration and promotion. That was one of the main things that they were pushing when it had to do with a registration platform and being able to integrate, people's social media profiles very easily and quickly. That's nice. If they continue that here, that's kind of a benefit. But I think what this also makes me think of too, and I put on my producer and contract hat, is any of these, whether it be AirMeet or Pathable that's in active development, it's going to be really interesting and important to look at those SLAs, those service level agreements for what the tech can provide, what it's promising to provide, especially if you're spending that much money, and what you get back if it doesn't provide. So I think that could be key here if there are some kinks they're still working out. But again, I will say from a registration standpoint, they've been a fairly good workhorse. So if they're able to translate that plus, it could be, a potentially good solution.
And that brings us to our final platform here, which is the infamous and awesome Remo. It is a video-first virtual workspace for remote teams. So it has primarily been designed for supporting virtual team environments and creating interactions that feel out of the box. And you'll see that in some of their demo videos that their user interface is really trying to get people out of that structure. However, they have Remo Conference Edition, which is if you were a nonprofit, for example, who had to cancel your benefit and you're trying to figure out a way that you could create some of that experience online, this would be the platform for you. Just to give you a quick preview here, where you can have your speakers and presenters, folks are once again at tables, but unlike AirMeet, you're going to have the networking before the event. So once people sit down, they can chat with each other directly. As the organizer, you can then broadcast the content to everybody when it's time for that to start. And then after it's over, you can have networking again, either at your table or by switching it up kind of around the room. And you could either do those as pre-seated tables or as kind of first come, first serve tables. But it can create some of that networking serendipity that's really powerful at in-person events, and that's been pretty challenging to recreate in the virtual environment. Michael, Heather, any thoughts to add?
I was just going to say, I love it. You promised me something good at the beginning when I said AirMeet, and you delivered, because I really like A, the graphic interface, B, the opportunity for people to pop in, and C, one thing that this makes me think of too, that I feel like I've been missing, is a lot of sensory experience with these online elements, and we don't have to. I was thinking walk in, walk out music can really set the tone. And so in any one of these, we can do walk in, walk out music. And as I'm looking at these tables, I feel like, gosh, they need a soundtrack. And again, I feel like we're getting closer and closer. So I really like this interface, and the fact that it's pretty easy to use, it looks like, is even better.
Yeah, I agree. I love the interface. And something that, we've talked about before is you could have a real world component of something like this. So if you have a 200-person event and you're using this platform, you could mail people centerpieces, right? And they could make sure that it's visible on their camera, just to create a sense of actually being in a actual space together, little tokens that do that. And then as they're watching the keynote or the main show and go back to speaking with each other, there can be a real tangible, like you were saying, Heather, sensory experience of having a shared experience together.
Yeah, we've been talking about that with food.
I love the idea of bringing in the other dimensions, and we can still send things. We forget that. So I love that. You could send them programs. You could send them all sorts of things. And I think that just brings people together more. I love that.
We're seeing that a lot. Now, this would be one you could easily do on House Party or Zoom or Facebook Live, of essentially virtual dinner parties where everybody has the same recipe. They're all cooking it together, and so therefore they're all eating the same meal at the same time. Doesn't really work for much more than 8 people in a given call because of just the realities of conversation. But little things like that can create really powerful community experiences and bring in that multisensory piece.